All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be taking a look at how you can incorporate feeds of article and event content into your website. There are essentially two ways to pull article and event content into either the sidebar or the main body column of a web page on your website. The first way is to use the local event pages or the local article pages that you create within your own Drupal site when you're logged in as an administrator or a content supervisor. And then another option is to actually pull content from an external source, such as GW Today or some other external GW website. And you can also use the university calendar as a source to pull in event information if you do not want to manage that information within your own website. What that will actually look like, you can see here on the museum site, we've got a sidebar feed of events running. This is what your sidebar feed for any local events will look like, but it's also what the feed will look like if you choose to pull that content in from an external source such as the university calendar. We wanted to make sure that that experience was the same for your user no matter which of the sources that you elected to use. Clicking over to the Office of Media Relations website, here we can actually see the two different views that you have for pulling in article content. So over here in the left sidebar, we just have a list of headlines. You can see the date as well. If the user clicks onto that link, it will actually take them to the detailed article page where they can read the full text of the article. Another option, which we can see here in this middle column, will pull in, again, that headline of the article as well as the date, but it will also allow you to pull in just a little bit of summary to give the user just a little bit more information about what it is the article is about. So those are really your two options for views with pulling in article content. And the other thing about this particular view that we're looking at here in the middle, you can also use this for event pages within your GW Drupal website if you choose for the source to be those local event pages. So that will allow you, again, to show the title of the event, the date and time that the event took place, as well as a little bit of summary text to give your users just a little bit more information that might entice them to click through into that detail page. So I'm going to go ahead and log into our test site so that we can walk through the steps of actually putting one of these together. Okay. So I am going to use the Drupal training page as like the base page where I'm going to be pulling in all of the feeds. And that's the most important thing to remember. When you want to have a feed of either events or articles pulled onto any page, you need to make sure that you have that base page created that's basically going to serve as the home for all that will sit. Typically, you'll see that under something like a news and events page. I'm just going to stick it on here, excuse me, on the Drupal training page just because it's a little cleaner on our test site. But you just always want to keep that in mind. So on this page, we just have some dummy text, but it's always a good idea to have a nice title at the top of your page that kind of lets users know what that page is about, whether that's going to be your news and events, landing page for your whole site, or if it's just a page that's going to pull in events or news information about a specific topic or program or something along those lines. You want to make sure that whatever's going on in your body text ties into that supplemental information that you're pulling into your sidebars and so on and so forth. So the other thing that you have to remember when you want to create a feed of from the local event pages in your website or the local article pages in your website, you have to have those pages created before you can create the feed. Otherwise, nothing will show up. Once you have those pages created, all you need to do is click on the Customize this page button down at the bottom. And then I'm going to start in my right sidebar, and I'm going to add an event feed. And so those are going to be listed under the GW Display Views - Site Placement. And then once you click on that, you want to go to the GW Events Overview page. Once you select that view, you'll be presented with this window of configuration options. Let's go a little bit. This will allow you to override the title so that you can have whatever title over that feed that you want. Typically, we see upcoming events, upcoming information sessions, something along those lines. You want to keep it short and sweet for your users so that they can quickly scan it and get an idea of what it is. And also just visually, it looks nicer if they're shorter because they won't text wrap. So I'm just going to do upcoming events. The default number of items that will display is 10. For a sidebar, that's kind of long for a sidebar, so I'm actually going to drop mine down to 5. Use your best judgment on that, but just remember that people are scanning this information. They're not really reading it word for word, so you don't want to overwhelm them with too many other things on the page, especially if you have other supportive elements going on. And then the next setting that you want to elect is what the event type is, and these correspond to the subtypes for when you actually create that event page. If you just want to select one, you can just select that one subtype. If you want to pull in everything, you can either hold the Shift button down and go to the last option and highlight that, or you can actually, on a PC, hit the Control button, on a Mac, hit Command, and then hit the A button, and that will select everything for you. And what that means is the system is going to look for every event that's using one of these subtypes and pull it into my feed. So again, if I only selected one, it would only pull events in using that one subtype. It wouldn't pull in anything that was tagged as education and training, holiday, information session, so on and so forth. I would only get the community service and outreach events. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and select everything. And then the next setting you want to take a look at is your display option. So by default, it's going to say all-purpose sidebar. You just want to click on that drop-down and expand it. And we're going to start with the event list sidebar. And that's what's going to give me that nice date block that we were seeing earlier on the museum site. So then you want to check the Show Date button and then click Finish. And so right now, we can see over in my right sidebar, there's a pane that says placeholder for empty GW events overview page. And that's okay, that's what's supposed to happen. Once that's there, you want to go ahead and click the Save button. And after you customize the page, typically you'll have to refresh it to actually see the changes that you've made. So once I refresh my page, I can actually see my events showing up here. And so, excuse me, something to know about why these events are showing up. Not only are these events showing up because I picked that specific subtypes for them to display, the other thing that's important is that for this page, it has this Drupal training page that's serving as the base for all of my feeds. It has a site placement value of Drupal training. These events also have a site placement value of Drupal training. If they did not, they would not show up because the system wouldn't know to match it to this page because that site placement value didn't match. Okay, so that is one view that you can have for your events. Another option for pulling in your events that we touched on earlier is that option that allows you to have a nice little summary show up. So again, I'm going to click on that Customize this Page button, and this time I'm going to add a pane to the middle column. Again, I'm going to go to the Display Views - Site Placement option, and I'm actually going to pick that same GW Event Overview page content pane. So we've got all of the same options to update. I'm going to run through those quickly. I'm going to leave it set to 10 this time because I'm putting it in the middle column, so that's a little bit more supportive of having more items show. Again, I'm going to pick all of the event subtypes, but again, if I wanted this to be filtered for specific subtypes, I could do that instead. And then this time for my display options, I'm actually going to pick the Headline Spotlight. And I'm going to check the Show Date button and the Show Image button and click Finish. So again, we've got that empty placeholder waiting for my events to populate, and once I save and refresh the page, we should see those come up. But before I do that, I'm first going to grab the opening body text pane that should be at the top of the page, and I'm going to drag that back up so that it's the first thing people will see when they land on this page. By default, whenever you add a content pane to any one of the columns, it's going to get added at the very top. So you want to make sure that you just get things back in an intuitive hierarchy with your opening text at the top. So I'm done that. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And I'm going to refresh my page. And now we can see my upcoming events listed down here as well. But now I've got the title of the event, the time and date of the event, and then I've got a little bit of opening summary text just to give my users more information. Now, you might have remembered that I checked that show image box. None of these events actually have an image on them, which is why you don't see anything. But if I were to now go into any one of these specific pages and add an image in the main image field, that image would show up on this page as well. So it's just another tool in your tool belt for when you're figuring out what you want the layout of your page to look like. Any questions so far on how to add events? Okay. So then let's go ahead and move into pulling in news content. With your news content, just like with events, you can pull that content from the local article pages that you create on your site. Just like with the event pages, they have to be created first, and they also have to share the site placement value for whichever page you want to pull them into. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that Customize this page button. And this time I'm going to start in the left column. I'm just going to put a simple feed of events, or I'm sorry, of articles. So I'm going to click on the Display Views - Site Placement. And this time you want the GW article news overview. And again, the options that you have here to configure what that feed looks like, pretty similar to the options that you had for the events one. So everything should look pretty familiar. I'm going to customize this title to say latest headlines. I'm going to drop this feed down to 10. And I'm going to select all of these subtypes, just like we did with the event items. And again, I'm going to change that default display option of all-purpose sidebar. And this time I'm going to choose headline list sidebar. I'm going to elect to show my date, click Finish. And then before I save my page, I'm going to move my sidebar sub-navigation back up so that it's the first thing people see when they get onto this page. And then I'm going to click Save and refresh my page. And so now I've got my sub-navigation followed by a list of headlines from article pages that exist within my Drupal website. And because I picked the headline list option, I just get that article title, the headline in this case, and the date that the article was actually published. And you can see that these go in reverse chronological order from the most recent date to the latest date. Now, if I wanted to have a view similar for my articles here that I have going on in this middle column, I'm going to follow the same steps as I did before. And I'm going to click on Customize this page. Go back to my Display Views - Site Placement. And I'm going to, again, pick that same GW article news overview page content pane. And again, all of the same options are there. What we're really just focusing on with this task is changing that display view option. So again, I'm just going to say latest headlines. I'll leave it set to 15 in this case. And again, I'm going to select all of those subtypes. And my display option this time around, I'm going to choose that same one we had before with Headline Spotlight. So this is the one case where events and articles will share the same display option, and that will be your Headline Spotlight. And that's what, again, is going to allow us to have the title, the summary, an image if you elect it, as well as the date. I'm going to go ahead and click on Finish, drag my opening paragraph up to the top, and then click Save. And then click on Refresh. And now I've got my headline spotlight view of my latest articles here, and we can see that some of these articles do have images, so those are pulling in as well, and they are getting text wrapped with the summary text. It's important to note a couple of things when you do feature that image. It's a setting that will apply to the entire feed. So the reason why you don't see an image on this one is because there was no image added to that particular article. If there was an image added to that article, it would get pulled into the feed as well. The other thing to note is that the size, the size of the images, they're going to be uniform for all of them. So if you have some images that are portrait in landscape and are portrait as opposed to landscape, the dimensions of them might not look as nice when they're actually in this viewer. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're going about creating your articles for your feeds for your site. You want to have a unified plan for how those images are going to be added to the article pages, because if they have to be in a feed together, you want to make sure that they just look nice and cohesive in that list. The other thing to note about the images that get pulled in here, these images were added to the main image field on the article page. If they had been added to the body text itself in line in the WYSIWYG text editor, they would not pull in this format. They might come along with the rest of the text depending on where they were added in the article, but it'd be kind of hit or miss as far as how nicely they formatted within the feed itself, because it's not really text and it hasn't been developed to pull images in the way that the main image has been pulled in. If anybody has any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask quickly. I had to close the chat window. Apparently it was getting in the way of your view. So if I'm going through anything too fast, or if you just have a question about anything we've gone through so far, just let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and move into the option for how to feature either event or news type content from an external source. So I touched on this at the very beginning, but basically what you're doing in this case is you're creating an RSS feed from that external source. You're adding that external RSS feed to your Drupal site, and then you're adding a content pane for a feed of that RSS source information to get it to show up on your website. And with the events, which is the first one we'll look at, it's going to basically look exactly the same as what we see here. So I'm going to customize my page and add a new content pane to the right side. And then I'm going to go to the Display Views - Site Placement. And I'm going to select the RSS Events Display. And so you have a lot of those same options that you had before. These are going to be events from the university calendar. I'm going to call this feed University Event. I'm going to leave it set to 5 items. I've already added the feed to the system itself, and you can see that there is a category for that called University Calendar, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. Just as we did before, I'm going to change my feed option, the display option, to Event List Sidebar. And then I'm going to click the Show Date checkbox and then click Finish. And this one actually shows up right away. So you can see it already looks exactly like the feed does from the local events within your Drupal website. The difference is when somebody clicks on this one, and I'm not sure if you can see it down at the bottom of my browser window, but you can see that that link actually is pulling from the source from the university calendar. And when a user clicks on that link, a new browser tab will open, or a browser window, depending on how the user has their browser set up, and it will take them directly to that event page. So this is a really good way to have events on your website without actually having to manage events within your website. The other benefit of doing this is that these events are on the university calendar, so they're reaching a much wider audience than your website might reach, because somebody might not know you have a website, they might not be in your program or interact with your office very often, but they might go to that university calendar. So that's a great place for them to see the event there. But then on the opposite end of that, you might have users who mainly use your website as a source of information and they do not go to the university calendar. So if you're pulling that feed in from the university calendar, they can see it here instead, click over it to the university calendar and see the information that they need to determine if they would like to go to that event or not. So that is what the feed will look like if you're pulling in an RSS for event-based information. At this time, this is actually the only display view that's supported. So having the date block here with the title and the time, we're not able at this point, unfortunately, to pull in more information like an image or that summary text. That is something that's in our backlog. But for now, you can pull in a feed like this, and so far it's done pretty well for our users. So definitely want to make sure that you're aware that that is an option for you. Another option for pulling in external news sources, this time I'm going to go back to my left sidebar, is to create an RSS feed from that external source, and again, add that RSS feed to your Drupal site, and then create a feed based off of that. So once I've clicked that Customize this page button and determine which column I want to add that feed to, I'm going to pick the Display Views - Site Placement again. And this time we're going to the GW RSS Feed Aggregator content pane option. And my source in this case is actually the Food Institute blog. So I'm going to say latest from the Food Institute. I will leave that set to 5, and in this case I have a category that's called GW Blog. And in this case I actually don't need to make any other changes. I can just click the Finish button, and you can see here that we've got a very simple feed just of the blog titles pulling in. The reason why I didn't have to change that display option is, again, just like with the University Events feed, this is the only display that's supported at this time for any kind of news RSS feed that you pull into your site. It's simply going to pull in whatever that title or headline is. When the user clicks on the title or headline, it will take them over to that external source so that they can see the full text on that page. Just like with the events, we are working on refining that and making it a little more dynamic as far as what information can be pulled. But for now, this is what you would get if you pulled in a blog or other news type RSS feed into your website. So now that I've pulled my sub-navigation back up, I'm going to click the Save button and then refresh. And once the page reloads, now you can see that this is basically what my page is going to look like. So I've got my event feeds going down my right sidebar with the date block, the title, and the time. Down the middle column, I've got a headline spotlight feed of article pages in my Drupal site. So I get my title, my date, a little summary, and then if I've elected to, I can also display that image. This same display option is available for events as well. Going on in my right sidebar, I've got a pretty simple headline list of external news information. In this case, it's coming from the Food Institute blog, which is using the GW blog service. And then, but you can use this, again, for any external news source, even if it's GW Today, completely external like Huffington Post. You just have to get the RSS feed from that source to be able to add it to your Drupal site. And then that RSS feed is followed by a feed of headlines from article content that has been created locally within my Drupal site. And again, this is a more simplified display option where you just get your headline or your title that displays here and clicks over to the detail page, followed by that date. So that is how you add feeds to your Drupal site and the different display options that you have available to you. It looks like we're just about running up on time, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself. I'm going to go ahead and open the chat box back open as well. You can put your question in there. So it looks like we have a question of how do you add a feed to a category ID. So you have to be a site administrator to create an RSS feed in your website, and I don't know how many of you are, so that's why I didn't go through all of those steps. But RSS feeds are created under the configuration option, which is only available to site administrators. You go all the way down to web services and then feed aggregator. And once you get to this interface, you'll see that there are two sections on it. The first one is the feed overview, and the second one is the category overview. You create the category first, and then you add the feed to it. So I'm actually going to pull up the Food Institute blog feed, and I clicked the wrong button. Where are you? Food Institute blog feed. Here we go. So you can see here I gave it a title, Food Institute blog. That's a back-end thing for me to be able to recognize what it is. And then this is where I've got the blog feed link itself. This is the interval for how often I want the feed to be checked for any updates, the number of items that I want to be pulled at a time, and then this is where I actually selected the category for the feed itself. And you can see that you can select multiple categories for a single feed so that it can show up in different ones when you're adding it to a page. So if I were to create a page where I wanted CPS events instead, but I wanted to make sure that this Food Institute blog content was also pulled in, I would just have to make sure I also have the checkbox checked for this one as well. But I'm just going to leave it set to GW blogs. But that is where and how you can set up a feed. And feeds really could use their own separate training session, just because since they are dealing with external sources, the location and manner in which the feed will get created can vary very differently across all of those different source locations. For instance, creating a feed from the university calendar is very different from how you create a feed out of a GW Blogs website. So that might be something we talk about in the future, but just for today's purposes, a quick overview of where those are created and what they look like. Are there any other questions? All right, then I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we will get this shared over with you as soon as it's available. Thank you all for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day.